Okay, so you want to own a hotel. Picture it. Your name isn't on the sign, but it might as well be. The lobby lights come on at dusk, whether you're standing there or not. Guests roll in off the highway, tired and grateful. They ask for nothing but a clean bed and a working key card. The pool glows blue after dark. Even in the off-season, somewhere behind a front desk, money is arriving. Rooms are earning while you sleep in your own house, miles away. There's a version of this fantasy where you never even visit. A management company runs it. A brand's app fills the rooms. A check clears every month, quiet and reliable. A pension you built yourself. You picture the ribbon cutting. A local news crew. The mayor shaking your hand for the cameras. You picture the plaque near the elevator bank. Small, tasteful, permanent. You picture 5-star reviews about a lobby you chose the carpet for. You picture a slow, compounding kind of wealth, the kind that never asks you to clock in. Sounds simple. It is not simple. Nobody selling this dream mentions page 40 of the franchise disclosure document. Nobody mentions the renovation deadline that arrives exactly when your loan is stretched thin. Because before a single guest checks in, the price of the table lands, and it is bigger and stranger than almost anyone pictures. The price of the table, start with the number nobody quotes you up front. Cost per room. The industry calls it cost per key. In 2025, a limited service hotel costs about $167,000 per room to build. Select service runs closer to $223,000 per room. Full service climbs to $409,000 per room. Luxury clears $1.06 million per room. In some cities, it doubles that. Read that again. Per room, not per hotel. The number surprises almost everyone the first time. It shouldn't. A hotel room is a tiny apartment. It has plumbing, wiring, climate control, and furniture. Then it multiplies by 100. Then it adds a lobby, a kitchen, a laundry, and a parking lot. Multiply it out. A modest 100-room, 3-star property can clear $20 million before opening a single door. That covers construction, furniture, and payroll for staff trained before anyone checks in. Land alone can eat a quarter of the budget if the site is good. A bad site is cheaper to buy and slower to fill. There is no discount tier for hope. There is no refund if your highway exit never gets built. Compare the tiers directly, and the range is jarring. A 2-star property runs $80,000 to $150,000 per room. 3-star runs $150,000. 4-star runs $250,000 to $400,000. 5-star clears $500,000 per room. All of it before land, before financing, before a single reservation exists. Here is the mechanism under the number. The per-key figure in every industry report is not a budget. It is a floor. It excludes financing costs. It excludes the franchise application. It excludes the furniture upgrades the brand will later demand. Developers use the figure to get construction loans approved. In practice, it functions as a sales figure, aimed at you. The industry's own consultants call it a starting line, not a finish line. Soft costs run 20% to 40% on top of hard construction costs. That's architecture, engineering, permits, legal, insurance, and project management. All before a single wall goes up. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment adds another layer, often high single digits to mid-teens as a share of the total project. Then come pre-opening expenses, hiring, training, marketing to guests who don't exist yet, inventory for a kitchen that hasn't served a meal, all spent before the first dollar of revenue lands. At the luxury end, the math turns almost comic. One valuation consultant put it plainly. Build at $1 million a room. Run at 65% occupancy. You need guests paying roughly $1,000 a night just to cover the debt, not to profit, just to survive the loan. Most hotels never crack a $1,000 average rate. The gap between the spreadsheet and the market is where luxury projects quietly die. Long before groundbreaking, city costs widen the gap further. A dense urban core can run well over $500 per square foot. A suburban budget property might land closer to $150. The address does as much work as the blueprint. Maybe you skip construction entirely. You buy an existing hotel instead. The price looks friendlier. The building already stands. The staff already works. But an existing hotel arrives carrying its history, deferred maintenance the seller stopped mentioning, equipment near the end of its life. and one document waiting at the closing table that will meet shortly. Buying doesn't skip the costs. It just rearranges their order. The listing price isn't the price, it's the deposit. The inherited traps you've built it, or bought it. Now you need a name people trust. An unbranded hotel competes on price alone. Price alone is a losing game. So most owners rent a name, and here is where the second bill arrives. That trusted name costs money before your first guest ever books. Marriott charges $100,000 to apply, plus $300 per room past the first $275. Hilton charges $85,000, plus $400 per room past its own threshold. That's the entry fee. It buys you nothing but the right to apply. Then comes the ongoing bill. This one never stops. Royalty fees, marketing fees, reservation fees, loyalty program fees. Each one sounds small in isolation. 2% here, 3% there. A booking fee per reservation, a loyalty charge per point stay. Together, these typically run 9% to 12% of your gross room revenue every month for the entire life of the agreement. Read that again. Individual line items run higher still. Westin's royalty fee alone takes 7% of room revenue. That's before marketing, before loyalty, before the reservation cut lands on top. Economy brands aren't automatically cheaper. A budget flag like Days Inn charges a 5.5% royalty, roughly the industry average, even though its rooms sell for a fraction of upscale rates. That detail matters more than it looks. Franchise fees are a percentage of revenue, not a flat amount. A budget hotel pays the same cut as a luxury one on a much thinner base, so the fee burden actually falls harder on the smaller owner. The brand never shares your downside. It only shares your upside, proportionally, every month. However thin your margin runs, here is where it gets interesting. A Marriott franchise term runs 20 years. It is not renewable at the end. You do not own the brand you operate under. You rent trust that other owners spent decades building. And the lease has a hard clock. The lease has conditions too. A trained general manager must work on-site, full-time, for the entire term. You cannot license a famous name and simply walk away. The fee stack rarely stops at royalty and marketing. Luxury brands add a separate food and beverage royalty, another 2 to 3%, taken from restaurant and banquet revenue. Add the technology mandates. Add mandatory training, running past 600 hours per manager under certain brands. None of it is negotiable once you've signed. And if you're converting an existing hotel, one more thing waits at inspection. The brand sends an inspector. The inspector writes a list. That list has a name. It deserves its own section. It is the most consequential document a hotel owner ever receives. We'll get there. For now, understand the shape of the deal. 2 decades of fees, a required on-site manager, a brand you can't modify, a name that was never yours, only ever borrowed. You didn't buy a franchise. You signed a 20-year lease on your own name. The revenue layers. So where does the money actually come from once the doors open? Start with the obvious stream, room nights. A booked bed, sold nightly, is the base of everything else. But a room night is a strange product. It expires at midnight. An unsold Tuesday room is gone forever. You cannot warehouse it. You cannot sell 2 on Wednesday to make up for it. Every empty night is inventory destroyed at sunrise. That's why the whole industry obsesses over one metric: revenue per available room. Not per occupied room, per available one. The empty rooms count against you, always. Layer 2, for full-service properties, food and beverage, restaurants, banquets, room service, wedding catering. Luxury brands take their separate royalty here too, on top of the room cut. Layer 3 is quieter, and far more important than most owners realize: the loyalty program. Members of a chain's rewards program can drive more than half of a hotel's bookings. Leave the brand, and you can lose that half almost overnight. That is not a marketing footnote. That is the actual machine keeping the lights on through a slow winter. Think about what half your bookings means in practice. It's the difference between covering payroll and missing it, between making the loan payment and calling the bank. One membership database, owned in another city, deciding which outcome you get. Most people never think about this part. The loyalty number, not the room count, is the real product. Guests don't just pick a bed. They redeem points. They chase status. They stay loyal to a point system that isn't yours. It was never yours, and it can redirect them to a competitor the moment your flag comes down. Then there are the small streams. Parking, resort fees, early check-in charges, late checkout charges, minibar markups guests grumble about but rarely refuse. None of them is large alone. Together, across a year of occupied rooms, they move the bottom line, which is exactly why brand standards increasingly dictate how you're allowed to charge them. Even your smallest revenue decisions run through someone else's rulebook. Group business forms another layer for properties near a convention center or airport. Meeting rooms, catering minimums, audio-visual rental fees. During conference season, this can rival room revenue. The rest of the year, it can vanish entirely. The final stream is the one almost nobody pictures: the reservation pipeline itself, the brand's booking engine, its app, its call center, its algorithm deciding which hotel appears first in a stranger's search. You pay monthly for access to that pipe. You never own the pipe. You rent a position in the queue. The rooms aren't the product. The loyalty number is, and you don't own it. The cost ledger now: count the bleed. Every month, full rooms or empty ones. An empty room still costs money. The air conditioning still hums. The insurance still accrues. The tax bill doesn't check the occupancy rate. A hotel is a machine that burns cash at idle. Utilities, running around the clock in every room. Housekeeping payroll, staffed for weekend peaks, even on the slowest Tuesday in February. Front desk coverage, 24 hours, every day of the year. Holidays included. Property insurance, priced higher than almost any other real estate category. Strangers sleep under your roof every night. The liability follows. Every slip in the shower is your exposure. Every incident in the parking lot. Every allergic reaction in the restaurant. The premiums price all of it in, whether it happens or not. Real estate tax, assessed on a building whose value tracks the brand's performance, not yours. Maintenance reserves, typically several % of gross revenue, set aside for what 100 strangers a week do to carpet, mattresses, and plumbing. Hotel rooms age in dog years. A mattress that lasts a decade at home survives a few years here. Carpet wears through in 5. Nothing in the building is ever finished being paid for. Laundry alone is an industrial operation hiding behind the lobby. Hundreds of pounds of linen, washed daily. Water, gas, chemicals, and labor. Every single day, the doors stay open. Payroll takes the largest single share of operating costs, often more than a third of total revenue, once benefits and peak season overtime fold in. A full-service property needs front desk, housekeeping, maintenance, food service, and management. Often one employee for every 1 to 2 occupied rooms at peak. Turnover compounds it. Hospitality turnover exceeds 70% annually in some markets. A property effectively rehires a large share of its workforce every year, at real cost, before those hires even become productive. Utilities swing hard too. Picture a pool, a kitchen, and central air through a southern summer. The bill can move by tens of thousands between a slow month and a packed one. Then the brand-mandated technology platform, your front desk, your bookings, your guest data, all running on the franchisor's required system. That platform is never optional. In one documented case, switching to the newer required system cost owners $100,000 to $250,000, plus retraining hours just to stay compliant. None of this is a monthly choice you make. It is a bill you're contractually required to pay. For permission to keep the sign lit above your own building, stack it all up. Add the franchise fees from earlier back in. A fully loaded hotel can watch 60% to 70% of gross revenue disappear before the owner sees a dollar. What's left funds debt service first. Profit, if any, comes last. The ledger isn't an expense sheet. It's a subscription bill with your name on the building. The trap here is the structural mechanism that kills owners of this asset. Not bad luck, not a bad year, not an unlucky location. A designed-in trapdoor, written directly into the agreement you signed years ago in a much better year. Every 5 to 7 years, your brand can issue a property improvement plan, a PIP, a mandatory renovation order, delivered on the franchisor's schedule, never yours. And here is the trap almost nobody sees coming. For a hotel converting to a major brand, a PIP can run $1 million to $4 million. For an established franchise, per-room costs typically run $10,000 to $50,000, depending on brand tier and property condition. You get 12 to 18 months to finish. Start to finish. The scope is set by the franchisor's inspectors, not by you. New bedding, new lobby furniture, new guest room technology, sometimes specified down to the finish on a nightstand. Each brand pushes its own priorities. One emphasizes mobile keys and in-room tech. Another wants the lobby rebuilt as a social space. Another mandates new exterior signage and curb appeal. The owner's opinion appears nowhere on the list. Picture the day it arrives. Your hotel is full. Reviews are decent. The loan payments are current. Then an envelope lands, and it lists $2 million of required work. You didn't schedule it. You can't appeal the scope. You can only fund it or fold. This is legal. This is normal. Refuse the PIP or miss the deadline, and the brand can pull your flag. Lose the flag, and the reservation pipeline goes with it. So do the loyalty guests. So does the entire revenue machine from earlier, all in one stroke. The PIP notice does not check your cash flow first. It does not audit your debt service. It arrives on the brand's clock, and the capital call is due regardless of your last 2 years. An owner who financed the build on thin, careful margins now faces a second construction project, unplanned, mid-lease, with zero say over scope or price. The trigger isn't limited to the calendar either. A brand can issue a PIP early. Slipping guest scores can trigger it. A newer competitor opening nearby can trigger it. Underperforming the market for a few quarters can trigger it. Think about what that means. The moment an owner is most stretched is the moment a capital demand becomes most likely. Financing a PIP mid-cycle is harder than financing the original build. Lenders see a forced renovation on leveraged property as added risk. The second loan usually costs more than the first. Some owners can't clear that bar. They sell instead. A still profitable, still full hotel sold at a discount because the capital call arrived at the wrong moment. Some borrow again and hang on. Either way, the decision was never really theirs. The system doesn't ask whether you can pay. It only asks whether you're still willing to fly the flag. The PIP isn't a renovation notice. It's a recurring toll for staying in business. The design secret. To understand why this system exists, go back to 1951. One bad family road trip. Kemmons Wilson, a Memphis builder, drove his wife and 5 children toward Washington, D.C. Every motel along the way was cramped and overpriced. Each one charged extra for every child in the room. To feel his frustration, understand what a 1951 motel was. Around 20,000 roadside lodgings dotted America's highways. Most were tiny, independent, and unpredictable. Travelers inspected rooms before renting them. Nobody trusted a bed they hadn't seen. He came home angry. He also came home with an idea. A chain of motels, identical from state to state. A tired family would always know exactly what they'd get. Kids would stay free. No surprises at the front desk. He mortgaged his own home for $325,000. On August 1, 1952, the first Holiday Inn opened on Summer Avenue in Memphis. It had 120 air-conditioned rooms, a restaurant, a swimming pool, a television and telephone in every room, all standard, none of it an upcharge. The name itself was almost an accident. His draftsman had watched the 1942 Bing Crosby film the night before. He wrote Holiday Inn on the plans as a joke. The joke stuck to half the planet. But a promise like that has a problem. It has to hold at locations the founder will never personally visit. So Wilson didn't just build hotels. He built an enforcement system. He opened an innkeeping school. He sent trained graders to every franchised property on a schedule. Motels that scored poorly had to fix the list, fast, or lose the Holiday Inn name entirely, regardless of how much the local owner had invested. That inspection system is the direct ancestor of today's PIP. It was built in 1952 to protect a tired family's trust. Today it protects a global brand's balance sheet, largely at the individual owner's expense. By 1968, there were 1,000 Holiday Inns worldwide. By 1972, the chain became the first in food and lodging to cross $1 billion in revenue. Wilson made the cover of Time magazine that same year. He built something else in 1965, quietly, alongside IBM. Holodex, the world's first computerized hotel reservation system. Any guest could check availability anywhere in the chain, instantly, decades before the internet made that feel ordinary. That system is the direct ancestor of the reservation pipeline from earlier. The pipe you pay for monthly. The pipe you never own. Every brand standard that frustrates a modern owner traces back to one 1952 decision. The thread counts, the lobby layouts, the mandated apps. Consistency, ruthlessly enforced, was worth more than any single owner's independence. Wilson sold his first Holiday Inn in 1973. It was later demolished. A funeral home eventually took the site. Nobody had to invent the symbolism. The building that started the system didn't survive. The system outlived it by more than 70 years. And counting. Kemmons Wilson didn't invent hospitality. He invented the audit. And every flag since has been running it against you. How they die. The design works, quietly and profitably, until leverage meets a downturn. Here is exactly what that collision looks like, with real numbers. In June 2007, Blackstone sold extended stay hotels to the Lightstone Group. The price? $8 billion. At the time, it was the largest chain of its kind in North America. There's a detail that makes the price stranger. Blackstone had bought the same chain 3 years earlier. It paid $3.1 billion in 2004. It sold for $8 billion in 2007. Same buildings, same beds. The price had more than doubled in 3 years. On paper alone, $7 billion of the purchase was financed with debt. Lightstone put down roughly $1 billion in cash. It borrowed the rest, at the absolute top of the hotel market cycle. Here is where it gets interesting. 18 months later, the numbers had already inverted. By the end of 2008, extended stays assets totaled about $7.1 billion. Its debt stood at roughly $7.6 billion. The company was underwater on paper before the recession had even finished landing. Business and leisure travel collapsed together. Revenue per available room fell more than 20% in months. There was no cushion left to absorb the shock. The leverage had removed the cushion years earlier. The company owned more than 680 hotels across the U.S. and Canada. Around 10,000 people worked in them. None of them had made a single decision about the debt. On June 15, 2009, Extended Stay America filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The hotels stayed open the entire time. Guests barely noticed a change at the front desk, but the ownership, the equity, the entire $8 billion bet was gone. In July 2010, new investors bought the company out of bankruptcy court. Blackstone itself was among them, buying back in. The price? $393 billion, half the 2007 purchase price. 3 years later, the exact same buildings, the same beds, the same guests, still checking in every night, unaware anything had gone wrong upstairs. Creditors later sued. They alleged the 2007 price had been inflated from the start. They claimed the deal was structurally insolvent the moment it closed, years before the recession ever hit. The dispute settled years later, for a fraction of the original claim. By then, the buildings had changed hands twice. The debt had been rewritten twice, and thousands of rooms had kept renting every single night through all of it. Sit with that part. The hotel, as a physical place, never once stopped working. The financial structure on top of it collapsed twice, while the beds stayed full. Extended stay didn't die from bad rooms or bad service. It died from a balance sheet built for a boom that stopped. Scale the story down from $8 billion to a single 100-room property. The shape doesn't change. A loan taken during a strong market, a PIP notice arriving during a weaker one, a capital call the cash flow was never stress-tested against. The corpse is always the same corpse. It just wears a different size of suit. The renaming, so what were you actually looking at? This entire time, you walked past one this week. You've slept in dozens. You've never once wondered who owns it, or what it costs them to keep the name over the door. Not a building, not a room count, not a friendly glowing sign over a highway exit at dusk. A hotel isn't real estate. It's a subscription to somebody else's reputation. You pay to use a name you didn't build and can't take with you. You pay a cut of every dollar that name earns you, month after month. For 20 years, you pay again every 5 to 7 years. Whether you asked for the renovation or not, the bill arrives on their schedule, never yours. And if you can't pay it, everything leaves together. The name, the loyalty guests, the entire pipeline, the moment the flag comes down. Every fantasy from the first minute of this video is still technically true. The ribbon gets cut, the plaque goes up near the elevator, the 5-star reviews arrive, eventually, for a lobby you really did choose the carpet for. None of that was the lie. The lie was believing any of it was yours to keep, free and clear. The way owning a building is supposed to feel. The building is real. The debt on it is real. So is the fee stack, draining up to 12% of every room sold. For 20 years, the room was never the product you were selling. The reputation was, and you were only ever renting it. Every night, one flag at a time, on somebody else's terms.